Before I share my story, let me ask you, what would you do if the person you trusted as family, the woman who called you sister, set her sights on your husband? I thought I knew my sister-in-law. I thought she was just a little flirtatious, a little dramatic but harmless. But when I caught her crossing the line, I realized I had a choice: look the other way or fight for my marriage. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about the moment you decide to stop being the victim and the courage it takes to set a trap for the truth, even if it means exposing the ugliest side of your own family. So settle in, because what I did next changed the way I saw my marriage, my sister-in-law, and myself forever. The day I realized my sister-in-law was trying to seduce my husband, I stopped doubting my instincts and started planning my revenge. It started with a laugh. Not just any laugh, but the kind that's a little too loud, a little too long, the kind that makes you look up from across the room. My husband, Mark, was telling a story at the dinner table, and my sister-in-law, Tessa, was hanging on every word. She leaned in, her hand brushing his arm, her eyes shining with a little too much interest. I tried to ignore it. Tessa had always been a flirt. She flirted with waiters, with neighbors, with the mailman. She was Mark's younger brother's wife, and she'd been part of our family for almost 5 years. She was beautiful, charming, and used to getting her way. I'd always chalked up her behavior to insecurity, to a need for attention, to the fact that her own marriage was rocky at best. But lately, something had changed. Tessa started coming over more often, always with an excuse. She needed to borrow sugar. She wanted to talk about her latest fight with Jake. She just happened to be in the neighborhood. She show up in tight dresses, her hair perfectly styled, her perfume lingering in the air long after she left. Mark was polite, as always. He'd listen to her stories, offer advice, pour her a glass of wine. But I started to notice the way Tessa looked at him, the way her gaze lingered a little too long, the way she laughed a little too loudly at his jokes, the way she found reasons to touch his arm, his shoulder, his hand. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. I didn't want to be the jealous wife, the one who saw threats everywhere. But the more I watched, the more I realized something was off. One night, after Tessa left, I found Mark in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. "Did you notice anything weird about Tessa tonight?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He shrugged, not looking up. "She's always a little much, you know how she is." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. A few days later, Tessa called, asking if she could come over to talk. Mark was at work, so I invited her in. She sat at my kitchen table, sipping coffee, her eyes darting around the room. "I just feel so lost," she said, her voice trembling. "Jake and I are fighting all the time. I don't know what to do." I listened, offering sympathy, but I couldn't help noticing the way she kept steering the conversation back to Mark. How kind he was, how funny, how lucky I was to have him. When she left, I felt a chill run down my spine. The next weekend, we had a family barbecue. Tessa showed up in a sundress that left little to the imagination, her hair loose around her shoulders. She laughed at all of Mark's jokes, found reasons to stand close to him, even offered to help him clean up in the kitchen. I watched from the patio, my anger simmering. I saw the way she touched his arm, the way she leaned in, the way she looked at him when she thought no one was watching. That night, after everyone left, I confronted Mark. "Do you think Tessa is interested in you?" I asked, my voice shaking. He looked at me surprised. "What? No, she's just lonely. She needs attention." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to trust him. But deep down, I knew the truth. Tessa wasn't just lonely. She was hunting. Don't go anywhere, because what I did next would test every boundary I thought I had and force me to decide just how far I was willing to go to protect my marriage. The days after the barbecue were tense. I tried to go about my usual routines, work, errands, helping our daughter with her homework, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something in my home had shifted. Mark seemed oblivious, focused on his job and the house projects he always had going. But I watched him more closely, searching for any sign that he was tempted by Tessa's attention. Tessa, for her part, didn't let up. She texted me almost every day, asking if she could stop by if I wanted to go shopping, if Mark could help her with something at her house. She sent photos of new outfits, asked for advice on what to wear to a party, even joked about stealing Mark for a day to help her move some furniture. I tried to keep my responses polite but distant. I didn't want to start a fight, didn't want to accuse her of anything without proof. But the more she pushed, the more I felt my patience wearing thin. One afternoon, I came home early from work and found Tessa's car in our driveway. My heart pounded as I walked inside. I heard laughter from the living room, Tessa's high and bright, Mark's lower and more reserved. I stepped into the room, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on?" Tessa jumped up, smoothing her dress. "Oh, hey, I just stopped by to drop off those gardening tools I borrowed. Mark was showing me some photos from your last vacation." Mark looked at me, his expression unreadable. Tessa was just leaving. She smiled, gathering her things. "Thanks for the coffee, Mark. See you soon." After she left, I turned to Mark. "Why was she here?" He shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "She just stopped by. I didn't invite her." I nodded, but the doubt lingered. That night, I called my best friend, Julia. She listened as I poured out my suspicions, my fears, my anger. "Do you think I'm overreacting?" I asked, my voice trembling. Julia was quiet for a moment. "No, I don't. I've seen the way Tessa looks at Mark. You're not imagining it, but you need proof. You need to know for sure before you do anything." I sighed, feeling both validated and defeated. "I just want my life back. I want to trust my family." "You will," Julia said gently, "but you have to protect yourself too." The next day, I started paying closer attention. I checked Mark's phone when he left it unattended, but found nothing suspicious. I watched Tessa at family gatherings, nodding every glance, every touch, every too long laugh. I started keeping a journal, writing down every detail, every interaction, every gut feeling. I felt like I was losing my mind, like I was becoming the very person I never wanted to be, paranoid, suspicious, always on edge. But I couldn't let it go. I couldn't let Tessa win. One evening, after dinner, Tessa called. She sounded upset, her voice shaky. "Can I come over? I just need someone to talk to." I hesitated, then agreed. I wanted to see what she would do, how she would act when she thought she had me alone. She arrived 20 minutes later, her eyes red, her makeup smudged. "Jake and I had another fight," she said, collapsing onto the couch. "I don't know what to do." I sat beside her, offering tissues, listening as she vented about her marriage, about how lonely she felt, about how no one understood her. Then she looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. "You're so lucky, you know. Mark is such a good man. I wish I had someone like him." I forced a smile, my anger simmering. "He is a good man, and he's my husband." She nodded, dabbing at her eyes. "I know, I wish things were different." After she left, I sat in the dark, my mind racing. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her keep pushing, couldn't let her keep trying to worm her way into my marriage. I decided to set a trap. Don't go anywhere, because what I did next would test every boundary I thought I had, and force me to decide just how far I was willing to go to protect my marriage. I spent the next few days planning. I wanted to catch Tessa in the act, not just for my own peace of mind, but so Mark would finally see what I saw. I needed him to understand that this wasn't just my imagination, that his brother's wife was crossing every line. I started by telling Tessa that Mark would be home alone on Saturday afternoon. I made up a story about taking our daughter to a birthday party across town, and how Mark would be working in the garage all day. I watched her face carefully as I told her, saw the flicker of interest in her eyes. "That's too bad," she said, trying to sound casual. "Maybe I'll stop by and bring him some lunch. He works too hard." I smiled, my heart pounding. I'm sure he'd appreciate that. On Saturday, I dropped our daughter off at Julia's house instead of the party. Julia knew everything, and she agreed to keep her for the afternoon. Then I drove back home, parking my car a few blocks away and walking the rest of the way on foot. I let myself in through the back door, moving quietly, my heart racing. I heard voices in the kitchen, Tessa's high and bright, Mark's lower and more hesitant. You really shouldn't have, Mark was saying. You didn't have to bring lunch. Tessa laughed. I wanted to. You deserve a little attention, Mark. You work so hard. I don't know how Anna keeps up with you. I peeked around the corner, my phone ready to record. Tessa was standing close to Mark, her hand on his arm, her body angled toward him. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen before, tight, low-cut, clearly chosen for effect. Mark looked uncomfortable, stepping back. Tessa, I think you should go. This isn't appropriate. She pouted, moving closer. Don't be like that. I know you feel it too. Why should Anna have all of you? I stepped into the room, my voice cold. Because he's my husband, Tessa, and you're my family, or at least you were. Tessa spun around, her face flushing with shock and embarrassment. Anna, I thought you were. I held up my phone, showing her the recording. I heard everything, and so will Jake if you ever come near my husband again. Mark stared at me, then at Tessa, realization dawning in his eyes. Is this what's been going on all this time? Tessa stammered, trying to explain, but the damage was done. She grabbed her purse and fled, slamming the door behind her. Mark turned to me, his face pale. I'm so sorry, Anna. I had no idea. I thought she was just lonely. I never encouraged her, I swear. I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. I know, but I needed you to see it for yourself. He hugged me, holding me tight. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for fighting for us. I hugged him back, relief and exhaustion washing over me. I just want my life back. I want to feel safe in my own home. That night, I called Julia and told her everything. She was furious, promising to support me if Tessa tried to cause trouble. I sent the recording to Jake, Tessa's husband, with a short message. You deserve to know the truth. He called me an hour later, his voice shaking. Thank you, Anna. I had my suspicions, but I never thought she'd go this far. The fallout was just beginning, but for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could breathe. The days after I exposed Tessa were a whirlwind of phone calls, tears, and awkward silences. Jake called me again, this time to apologize for not believing me sooner. I thought you were just being dramatic, he admitted, his voice heavy with regret. I'm so sorry, Anna. I should have listened. I told him it wasn't his fault. Tessa had fooled all of us, weaving her charm and her lies so tightly that we'd all wanted to believe the best. But now, the truth was out, and there was no going back. Tessa tried to do damage control. She called Mark, leaving long, rambling voicemails about how she'd been lonely, how she'd made a mistake, how she hoped we could all move past it. She texted me, too, begging me not to tell the rest of the family, promising it would never happen again. I didn't respond. I'd said everything I needed to say. Word spread quickly, as it always does in families. My mother-in-law called, her voice trembling with anger and disbelief. How could she do this to you? To Mark? To Jake? She promised to support us, to make sure Tessa faced the consequences of her actions. But not everyone took my side. Mark's older sister, Linda, called and said, Anna, I know Tessa's a flirt, but are you sure you're not overreacting? She's been through a lot. Maybe you misunderstood. I could hear the doubt in her voice, the way she wanted to believe the best about her sister-in-law. I tried to explain, but Linda cut me off. I just don't want the family to fall apart over a misunderstanding. I hung up, feeling more alone than ever. At the next family gathering, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tessa and Jake didn't show up. People whispered in corners, casting glances at me and Mark, trying to piece together the story from scraps of gossip and rumor. I held my head high, refusing to let shame or embarrassment take root. I had nothing to hide. Mark stood by my side, his hand in mine, his eyes full of gratitude and love. For the first time in a long time, I felt truly seen by him. He apologized again and again, not for anything he'd done, but for not believing me sooner, for not protecting me from Tessa's advances. We talked for hours, late into the night, about trust, about boundaries, about the kind of marriage we wanted to have. We promised to be more honest, more open, more protective of what we'd built together. Jake filed for divorce. It was messy, painful, and public. Tessa tried to blame me, saying I'd set her up, that I'd twisted her words. that I was jealous of her beauty and her freedom, but no one believed her. The recording spoke for itself. Some family members took her side, saying she was just going through a hard time, that Jake hadn't been a good husband, that Mark and I should have forgiven her. Others rallied around us, bringing casseroles, offering babysitting, sending cards and flowers. I learned who my real friends were. I learned that family isn't just about blood. It's about loyalty, about honesty, about standing up for what's right even when it's hard. Tessa moved out of town. I heard she was living with a friend, trying to start over. I wished her well, but I didn't look back. At home, things slowly returned to normal. Mark and I rebuilt our trust, one conversation at a time. Our daughter seemed lighter, happier, as if she could sense the tension had finally lifted. I started sleeping through the night again, no longer waking up with a knot of dread in my stomach. I forgave Mark, and I forgave myself, too, for doubting my instincts, for letting Tessa get so close, for not speaking up sooner. But the story didn't end there. The fallout from Tessa's betrayal rippled through our extended family for months. At Thanksgiving, there was an empty seat at the table. My mother-in-law tried to keep the peace, but the conversation was stilted, everyone tiptoeing around the subject of Tessa and Jake. My daughter asked, "Why isn't Aunt Tessa here?" I knelt down and told her as gently as I could, sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, and sometimes we need to take a break from people who hurt us. But we still love our family, even when things are hard. She nodded, but I could see the confusion in her eyes. At church, people whispered. Some offered quiet words of support, others just stared, their curiosity barely hidden. I heard the rumors, how Tessa had been seen with another man, how Jake had moved out, how our perfect family had fallen apart. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, to tell them the whole story. But I knew it wouldn't matter. People believe what they want to believe. Rachel came by every day, bringing food, helping with chores, sitting with me in the quiet moments when the grief threatened to swallow me whole. "You're not alone," she reminded me. "You have people who love you. You have your daughter. You have yourself." Mark and I started seeing a marriage counselor. We talked about everything, my anger, his guilt, the boundaries we needed to set with family. We learned to listen, to apologize, to forgive. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the pain felt too raw, too deep. But we kept showing up, kept trying, kept choosing each other. Our daughter found her own way to heal. She joined the school play, made new friends, started drawing again. Her laughter came easier, her hugs tighter. We created new rituals, movie nights with popcorn, Saturday morning pancakes, long walks in the park with our dog, Daisy. I watched her grow braver, kinder, more resilient, and I knew I was doing something right. I started writing again, journals, letters, stories for our daughter. I wrote about forgiveness, about starting over, about the way love can survive even the deepest wounds. I wrote about the lessons I'd learned, about the hope I still carried in my heart. I reconnected with old friends, joined a yoga class, started volunteering at the library on weekends. I let myself dream again, of travel, of new love, of a life that was bigger and brighter than the one I'd left behind. Spring arrived, and with it, a sense of gentle renewal. The garden outside our window bloomed with daffodils and tulips, and for the first time in months, our family spent afternoons outside, planting seeds and watching the world come back to life. There was still a quiet sadness in my heart, but also a new resilience. I asked Mark to build a new garden bed with me, and we worked side by side, laughing, getting our hands dirty, feeling like partners again. One evening, as Mark, our daughter, and I sat on the porch watching the stars, she leaned her head on my shoulder. "Are you happy, Mom?" she asked, her voice soft. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I am, honey, I really am." She grinned, her eyes shining. "Me too." I hugged them both close, feeling the steady beat of their hearts against mine. I knew there would still be hard days, still be moments of doubt and regret. But I also knew that we were strong, that we were brave, that we were enough, just the three of us together. I wasn't the same woman I'd been before I set that trap for Tessa. I was stronger, wiser, more compassionate with myself and with the people I loved. I knew that life would never be perfect, that there would always be pain and loss and disappointment. But I also knew that I could survive, that I could rebuild, that I could find joy in the small, everyday moments. I looked around at the life I'd created. The house filled with light, the garden blooming, the laughter of friends and family, and felt a quiet sense of peace. I was still here, I was still standing, and I was ready for whatever came next. As the months passed, the shockwaves from Tessa's betrayal finally began to settle, but the cracks in our extended family remained. There were birthdays where people sat on opposite sides of the room, holidays where someone always seemed to be out of town, and group texts that went silent for days at a time. I wondered if we'd ever feel whole again. One Sunday, my mother-in-law called and asked if we could all meet for dinner. Just the immediate family, no drama, no accusations. I hesitated, but Mark squeezed my hand and said, "Let's try." We arrived at her house to find Jake already there, looking thinner and older but with a quiet strength in his eyes. He hugged me, and for the first time since everything happened, I felt the old warmth between us. Dinner was awkward at first. Conversation tiptoed around the elephant in the room. But as the meal went on, something shifted. Jake talked about his new apartment, about how he was learning to cook for himself, about the dog he'd adopted from the shelter. Mark's mother shared stories from her own childhood, about the time she and her sister didn't speak for a year, and how forgiveness had changed her life. After dessert, Jake pulled me aside. "I want you to know I don't blame you, Anna. You did what you had to do. I'm grateful you told me the truth, even if it hurt." I hugged him, tears stinging my eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you, Jake. I just couldn't let her keep lying to all of us." He nodded. "I know, and I'm okay. Really, I'm moving on." That night, as Mark and I drove home, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. "Do you think we'll ever be a real family again?" I asked. He squeezed my hand. "Maybe not the way we were, but maybe something new, something honest." I thought about that for a long time. I realized that families don't heal by pretending nothing happened. They heal by facing the truth, by letting go of old wounds, by choosing to show up for each other, even when it's hard. I started a new tradition, Sunday brunch at our house, open to anyone who wanted to come. Some weeks it was just us and Jake, other times Mark's mother or a cousin would join. We laughed, we argued, we remembered. Slowly, the silences grew shorter, the laughter louder. I also found new confidence in myself. I took a class at the community center, started painting again, and even signed up for a 5K with my daughter. I realized that I was more than just a wife, more than just a mother. I was a woman who had survived betrayal and come out stronger. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up after brunch, my daughter hugged me from behind. "I'm proud of you, Mom. You're the bravest person I know." I smiled, holding her close. "I'm proud of you, too. We're both braver than we think." As spring turned to summer, I looked around at the life I'd rebuilt. The garden blooming, the house filled with light, the laughter of friends and family, and felt a quiet sense of hope. I knew there would still be hard days, still be moments of doubt and regret. But I also knew that we were strong, that we were brave, that we were enough, just as we were. I was still here, I was still standing, and I was ready for whatever came next. Now, the closing audience reflection follows, bringing your story to a satisfying, emotionally rich conclusion. Sometimes, the deepest betrayals come from the people we call family. I never imagined my own sister-in-law would try to steal my husband, or that I'd have to set a trap just to prove the truth. But life has a way of testing us, of showing us who we are when everything we thought we could count on falls away. If you've ever had to fight for your marriage, or if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted like a sister, I hope you know you're not alone. Healing isn't quick and it isn't easy. But with time, honesty, and a little bit of grace, it is possible. Sometimes the real strength is in letting go, not just of the people who hurt you, but of the guilt and shame you never deserved to carry. Would you have set a trap, or tried to keep the peace for the sake of family? Have you ever had to choose between protecting your marriage and protecting your heart? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little hope tonight. Thank you for listening and for being part of this family. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, Even after the deepest betrayal, you can still choose to begin again.